Yeah, good evening. You're speaking with Max, and what I want to talk about tonight is basically the murder of my father by Seventh Adventists. And right now I'm in a caravan, and my bulldog is next to me. I'm 60, and you think, how did I end up at 60 years old with just a caravan, an all-four drive, and my dog Buster? This is unscripted in a bussy. So, if we rewind from being adopted, which I would love to discuss sometime because you don't know your genetic capabilities. I found my real father in Perth and found that he was a millionaire and was in engineering, which is why I liked Harleys. But the Adventists didn't like that. They wanted me to be a teacher. And to them, like, people with skilled trades were low class. So I rebelled. I rebelled against who I was. Didn't know who I was. I only found my father recently. Rode across the desert to Perth and found out. So, brought up as an Adventist, I was brought up with a lot of guilt. And I got a lot of anxiety, and that's why I got a disability. So I had to work through the Adventist system, which is most of society's built on, which is guilt. Getting through guilt. Everything's good or bad, and there's a lot of judgment. So basically, rebelling, I spent probably up until 35, so involved in motorcycles and things that I could do that were practical, not realizing my potential, which was actually engineering. And when I wrote a book on Harleys, it was actually I realized that I had this unique ability to see a motor running and whatever. So we're living with Dad. Now, where the problem started is when Dad's health deteriorated and mine appreciated after studying Buddhism 15 years and working out my mind, was I was driving him in a little Getz from his home from 1999. We moved there. I was driving to all his medical appointments, and they included heart specialist, kidney specialist, Dr. Roger, renal specialist, urologist. Yeah, the bottom line is there's about 5 specialists that kept Dad together, glued together through a Dr. Grief in Morissetti. Now, basically, he got sick with pneumonia every year, at least. And maybe even 5 years ago, I had 5 guys working on him. Because he was critical. So, if we can fast forward through those years that I cared for him, he deteriorated somewhat. Once he sold the house, he sunk his money into a Seventh-day Adventist unit. Now, very quickly, even though Buster, snoring next to me, is his dog, he wasn't allowed to have his dog there, and Buster chose him. He used to sit by him every night on his bed, even though I took him for the runs and walks and whatever, being on disability pension from anxiety, but mainly because of my upbringing, guilt, whatever. So basically, these 5 guys called the A-Team get together, and they decide Dad's not going to where I'd organised, the $300 rent place. Basically decided to put him into a unit where Buster was banned, and eventually I was banned. And various things happened from me, someone backing into me, and I was accused of that. I was accused of eating Dad's Weet-Bix. Sleeping on the couch, even though I was catching his falls. Now, he was going downhill because he changed doctors to Dr. Caspar, who in Waratah didn't have the links with the other Waratah. So really, he wasn't getting diagnosed properly, and he only had the maximum 12 hours care. Big gap from me driving around all day. And so the story goes, he deteriorated pretty quickly. And my sister had died this time last year. She left no money to Dad and no money to me. She left it to a girlfriend. She was also adopted. So Dad didn't have a lot of money, and he had to keep enough for his funeral, but he started going through it because he got a little bit bent, and because he was with Adventists, they really wanted him to have another power of attorney as well, because I was kind of like banned from the village. Even when he's doing his ACAP assessment, I was banned. And as the guy did it, he didn't put in all the details for Dad. Now, the problem with that is when he went to Toronto Hospital, where my mother died, my sister died in Seventh Adventist Hospital in Sydney. Basically, he didn't fill the details in right because I was rung up and they rung and told me, like, get out of there sort of thing, you're banned. So Dad went into the hospital, into Toronto, without a doctor who didn't know him, a new one, and the ACAP assessor doctor. I forget what they're called now, but anyway, in charge. That was his hospital of choice, that guy. And when we get to Toronto, I see that things are going really haywire. Even as I left the apartment, the doctor said, oh, your dad's got a good heart. Dad's had a bad heart since he was 30. High blood pressure, triple stents, major problem. But he kept his diabetes under control. We moved to Toronto Hospital, where Dad gets admitted, and he's been x-rayed locally, and he had 2 cracked ribs from a fall that I didn't catch him from, and he had pneumonia in one lung. So basically, he was in a bad condition when he went into hospital, but they didn't seem to recognize that, and they were trying to exercise my father with a blood pressure of 250, and his sugars were 25. And I said, are you monitoring his water? And they go, what do you mean? I said, well, he's on water restrictions for his kidneys. He's only got 22%. Ring Simon Roger. They said they did ring Simon Roger. So, problem number 1. Next problem, sugar's 25. Why? Because they're feeding him. And Dad's eating all these lovely foods and fruit and stuff that he'd never eaten before. He's quite careful with his diet. So he puts on 12.5 kilos. A little bit of it fat, but mainly water. You could see it in his ankles. They kept x-raying his head, thinking that was a fall was causing his breathing problems. He was struggling for breath. I was getting more and more frustrated with the Seventh-day Adventist blonde lady at Toronto in charge, who said I had the head problem. And I asked him to, can we check him to see if he's, got dementia or something? Anyway, he was left in the exercise room. Can you believe the exercise room? Being exercised with those contrary problems. Poor guy was really struggling, 85 years old, my dad. And I said, stop it. You cannot exercise someone. I used to do PT, and you cannot exercise someone with blood pressure that high. They even did an op for him and put in a bypass because he had a urine infection, constantly. And they thought that would get rid of him. Bad time for an operation. So Dad's going downhill very fast. Anyway, I had to pay his phone bills and stuff as attorney, and I was making a phone call, and the king of the little gym area that he was staying in didn't like not knowing what was happening all the time, so he complained. So they throw him in a wheelchair. Not a wheelchair, that's what he thought. They throw his stuff on the bed and wheeled him out really quickly because I've offended this guy. I've said, look, if you've lost your top position, if you want an arm wrestle, you can have it. He got pissed off. Told the Seventh Adventist lady. They wheeled that out, wheeled him down the corridor into a room. The moment we went through the flowers, I hear this voice, oh, pretty flowers. And this guy was really annoyed that we'd come into his room. He was on his own. Why? Every other room they had someone. So he's in his room, on his own. Didn't like us coming there. Straight off. he's smart cracking and just talking about, looking at TV and talking about all this cooking that he could do in the room. He was off his rocker, because it is a mental place as well. And he was calling Dad a fairy, and Gay and me as well. Well, son too, eh? And what are you on the phone for, mate? Get off the phone. Get off. I couldn't hear him. I'm a bit deaf from a lot of motorcycle riding, the air rustling in your ears, more than the motor, Harleys. So I really couldn't hear him. So Dad's got his head in behind the curtain, right? And I've been sitting in a chair by the bed, and I can see this guy looking ahead and talking, and then looking at me, and he backing me over. So I go over, still couldn't hear him, lean forward, dumb move. He took a swing, caught the punch, was a left-hander, caught it, and his right arm snuck up, grabbed my beard, and he's shaking the hell out of my beard. Right, so I've just crossed his forearms and leant forward so I get pressure away from the beard. Nurses, that lovely, lovely lady, Joanne, I think her name is, she pushed the button and everyone ran in. I had to leave, which I did very calmly, because I'd even taken the guy's glasses off when I refrained him. And not beknown to me, but the police visited Dad. He rang me that night and said, oh, a heap of police were here, and yeah, you got to see one, you got to ring one. So I rang one, go in. Can you believe I got tricked into taken from Bullaroo into Belmont, where I was arrested and charged with assault. And skipping through after the fingerprinting, whatever, I went to court. To save my dad the effort, I pleaded guilty. The judge couldn't understand it. They took me aside to reduce the sentence. They find that there's no way that I've done anything that they can improve on, wondering what the heck I'm doing there. So basically, the judge says to me, mate, have you, because I go in again, he says, do you realise you're looking at 2 years? Can you tell me exactly what you did? I told him, and he said, well, that's not assault, that's defence. He said, I told you not to come in. Did you read the statement? I said, no, don't come in to this court without legal help and without reading the statement. So, long story short again, I went and saw one of Dad's ex-choir members that I didn't really know, Connolly, and I had to go to Connolly, and he said, we're doing this for free, but you're selling your Harley. So there goes the Harley. Boom, gone. Went back into Dad's funeral and expenses, because Dad was spending up big time before and in between hospitals, because I got him settled in Wyong for a little bit. So with the new woman that we had, who got all the accreditation at the church service, I got none for everything I've done for Dad. And so basically the court case is coming up on the 27th. I have this caravan because I've been looking after Dad until he sold the house. He got no money because the 200 grand he sunk into the Adventist institution is non-refundable. No money for me. Actually, I'm getting Dad's bills. And basically, I've got phone bill now of $1,200. I've got to try and get the executor to pay. So I'm living on baked beans and salvo food. And when I look at the fact that my sister died exactly 12 months ago, and my dad dies in 8 months from selling his house, being conned by this A-team that didn't recognise me, wouldn't have nothing to do with the bulldog, or banned here, banned from Toronto because the dog was barking. The Adventist woman said, you can't have him here. I've had to fight to keep Buster. Not fight, but you struggle with giving him away 3 times. So I'm doing it really hard, and I'm in a caravan, so the only place I could rent close to keep seeing Dad. And they couldn't understand. They thought I was sleeping overnight at his unit. No, not just in a 2-bed settee. Why would I want to be there when I've got this comfortable van with the aircon going? So everything I've done in my life in 15 years really was for my dad, who was a famous musician with 5 choirs, and I kept taking him to those choirs. No mention of that at the service either, of the Sydney Male Choir or the Shed Choir or the Avondale Choir. All Adventists ran his service. That's why I wasn't mentioned. So to me, it's a murder. It's a murder of basically the Adventists pulling him away from the best doctors that he had, pulling him away from an environment with only 12 hours care when I could care for him and take him to all the specialists. He didn't get that care. Toronto completely stuffing up, not knowing what was wrong with him, ringing up the specialist, not getting briefed. It happens a lot. Be careful when you put your dad in hospital. I watched him as long as I could. My best mate died opposite dad because I was banned from the hospital. I couldn't even visit him. And so it goes with the service and everything else. The Adventists, I blame for my dad's death. He worked hard for the church for 30 years in the music department, and he did everything he could to appease them. That's why he took their offer of the place, because Dad didn't like controversy. That's not analytical, challenging guy like me. He was very he just liked to rise to the top and be happy. I had to go around behind and say the doctor, no, he's not that well. So that's to me what I think of the Adventists and the system, what it's done to me. It's wrecked my life, Dad's life, my sister. She was a smoker and gay. She couldn't come out. That's what killed her. Guilt and their belief system. It got Dad too, because Dad happened to be gay too, and he couldn't come out. And I think that's what caused a lot of his heart problems. So there you go. There's my story. And yeah, I'll keep you updated what happens with but I'm sure I'll never get another Harley because there's no money. It's all gone down the tube. Thanks to the Adventists. Bye for now.